Since 2015, invitationals have been very common in competitive Smash Bros. Many companies and local scenes have hosted them, with the most notable being the Smash Summit series. After 14 Melee Summits, 6 Smash Ultimate Summits, and multiple events outside of the platform fighter genre, Beyond the Summit cultivated a formula that many invitationals still follow today. But is it a good format? Let's take an in-depth look to see the positives and negatives of the Summit formula. But first, I just want to preface how much I have enjoyed and been inspired by Beyond the Summit. I've spent dozens of weekends staying up till 2 a.m., multiple days in a row watching entire broadcasts. I've also hosted like 8 invitationals of my own, so I am thankful for the blueprint that they laid out. And I'm not the only one. Go ahead and search Summit, Invitational, or Finale on StartGG and see how many results you get. Clearly, their influence is astronomical, so thank you Beyond the Summit. That being said, there's a few sections I want to focus on: player qualification, schedule, player experience, and bracket format. I'll also go over what local or regional invitationals should consider instead of copying the Summit formula. Just to give an idea of my perspectives, I think that the player qualification method of invites, voting, and LCQs are very good and should stay. For schedule, I don't dislike the 3 or 4 day format, but for smaller productions, I think that 1 or 2 day events should be done instead. I like side events and wish that they would be more present nowadays, and I think streaming everything all in a row isn't the best method. For player experience, I think it is great that Summit covered so many expenses of the players, but it is difficult for smaller productions to follow that model. Sharing resources like food, travel, and a place to stay is very important for local and regional events to do in order to best service the players traveling for the events. And for bracket format, I think round robin is good, but I think that there are flaws, like not allowing players enough matches against others at their level, and the possibility of ties takes away from the format as a whole. I think Swiss pools with a double elimination lower division leading into the final bracket is a better system for all players. Also, I think allowing players to choose their opponent at some point is fine, but it's better if it is earlier in the event rather than later. And while 16 players is a good amount, I think going up to 32 can be beneficial, as it makes the event more stacked while still being manageable to run. Now let's go more in detail, starting with qualification. Most commonly, Summit-style invitationals have 3 forms of qualifications: invites, voting, and last chance qualifiers. Summit commonly invited most of the top 10 in the world, as well as considering other areas outside of North America, specifically Europe and Japan. A few events have done a circuit leading up to the event, which I'm personally a fan of, but going based off of recent rankings is also very reasonable. As long as the majority of the spots in the invitational are based on merit, I think pretty much any method for invites works well. Player voting is slightly less common and usually only applies to 3 to 6 players in the events, but it's the most controversial of the options. The cost to get a player in through voting can be thousands if not tens of thousands of dollars. And I've seen arguments that those funds can be used to help local scenes, as opposed to just one invitational. But it is the choice of each person to participate, and the money goes to support the event. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have it as an option. I've had over $400 in vote money multiple times, just for sub-regional invitationals. It's a great way to increase the prize pool, along with a decent option for players that aren't able to travel as much. However, I think there should be more restraint for voters to not spend money that isn't disposable income. And if a player is not financially stable, they should not risk debt just to get into one event. It is also very mentally devastating for players that campaign and raise money to not get in. Even locally, it can cause a lot of negative emotions. Personally, I think it's kind of a necessary evil. Players should just use discretion before they are reckless with this method. But it seems like players have started to become more reserved with personal funds, and some tournaments have helped by partially refunding players that don't get enough votes or give them a VIP pass. Overall, I still think voting should stay. The final qualification method is last chance qualifiers, or LCQs. These are very common, with some events only having qualifying spots at other events. I think having a small number of LCQs is the best method. If every player can just go to one event early in the season, get a spot, and not attend anything else, it doesn't support data for rankings and the tourney ecosystem. Qualifying spots at other events a week or 2 before the Invitational helps with viewership and attendance for the smaller events, along with extra promotion for the Invitational. Oftentimes the LCQ spot is at an already existing tournament, instead of a specific event just for non-qualified players. So sometimes bracket luck and collusion can affect who gets the spot, but if the event has enough individual weight, like Big House, Genesis, or Main Stage, then collusion shouldn't be a factor, and the spot will likely be viably earned. Either way, LCQs are a must-have for invitationals. Huge props to Summit for leading the charge by including LCQ spots back in 2017. All 3 qualification methods are reasonable to include. A few events like Smash World Tour and Ludwig's Invitationals omitted the vote-in portion, and other invitationals only had invite spots with no voting or LCQs. And the player rosters were solid, but I think using all 3 is a good idea for any invitational, international to local. Now onto the schedule. Summit used to operate as a 4-day event with a media day the Wednesday before. Eggdog also had a 4-day event, while most other invitationals maxed out at 3 days. As long as accommodations can be made, I don't think it's a problem to have a longer event at the top level. However, for local and regional events, I don't recommend having a 3 or 4 day event. Most players at that level aren't professional, so they likely either have school or work, and the longer the event is, the more difficult it is for players to be available. Personally, I prefer just doing a 1-day event to not require players to have to find housing, and to not take too much of their weekend if they have other obligations. But a 2-day event certainly could work if everyone is available and has housing. Another part of the schedule was all the brackets at the event. Summit being a 4-day event allowed for more novelty events on Thursday and some on Friday, while also mixing in other more standard side events. Doubles has been abandoned at invitationals the past few years due to supposed lack of viewership. Personally though, I think it should be brought back as an optional event. I liked having all 16 players paired up in an 8-team bracket, but if some players would rather just focus on singles, I think letting them skip and allowing invited players to choose a VIP or commentator if they can't find a partner would be reasonable. Eggdog had an egg drop, Rivals 2, Mario Party, and a regional with singles, doubles, and Arcadian as its side events, which I think was pretty good. I did want to see a melee side event with the invited players, but it still worked out. Mixing in side events will be different every event. I think it's a good idea to try and have some extra brackets here and there if there's enough time for it. Summit also streamed every single match one at a time. It makes sense because they have several days with a moderately small amount of matches compared to a major, and larger events try to make some money back from viewership, along with making sure every player gets screen time. However, if you are a local or regional invitational, do not do this. Just because Summit or someone else running an international invitational does it, doesn't mean you have to copy it to the letter. Streaming every match in a 16-player double elimination bracket is 30 or 31 matches in a row, which likely takes 10 to 12 hours. Now just imagine a format with more matches. Most regional invitationals don't get more than 500 viewers. The small financial return from so many matches streamed in a row isn't worth the time commitment in my opinion. 2 or more streams should be the goal for a 2-day event. You might be able to stream everything with 2 streams. But if you're a 1-day event, just accept you're probably not going to be able to stream everything, unless you have 3+ streams and the players are okay with waiting for stream every time. Either way, I think streaming everything on one stream works for larger scale invitationals, but not for smaller ones. They should consider more streams or some off-stream matches. Player experience partially relates to schedule, but it's different in a few ways too. Covering every player's food, hotel, and travel is very impressive for Summit to do, but for most events that is not reasonable and can cost a lot. But if everyone's only a few hours away and there's pooling of resources like carpools, a potluck, and sharing an Airbnb, it can work out. Other parts include having a lot of setups, giving everyone time to warm up, giving the players an opportunity to promote themselves to viewers, and making sure everyone is comfortable at the event. It takes access to finances and having a good team working together to provide a good player experience. Personally, I haven't had a large budget for my invitationals, and a lot of my fellow TOs end up playing in the event, so corners are cut sometimes. But as long as players are able to play the game and have some kind of hospitality, it usually ends up being okay. Additionally, since Summit had to disband due to low finances, having less financial overhead while working with the sponsors of players to help is important to consider. I'm sure Summit covering costs of players wasn't the only or even main reason for the shutdown, but it's important to be careful and not commit too much money to a project without trying other ways to share the load and have support from others. And then we have bracket format, which is very important and is something I'm pretty passionate about. The format that Summit is most known for is 4 round-robin pools of 4 players. A gauntlet stage for everyone besides first place from each pool, with 8 players starting in winners and 8 players in losers of the final double elimination bracket. This has been replicated dozens if not hundreds of times, and I think it's decent. As someone that cares about there being more data for rankings and each player being guaranteed more sets, it is a good format to be normalized, but I don't think it's perfect. Let's go through each possible format. Single elimination is a joke, double elimination is a standard for larger events, and while top seeds may prefer it because they have less opportunities to lose before they get to top 8, having some kind of pools-based format is a must-have for an invitational. Getting everyone together for something special just to do double elimination is a waste in my opinion. That leaves 2 main other options, round robin and Swiss. Even though I think the usual Summit format is better than double elim, round robin has flaws. First off, it's pretty much the only format that can have ties for first place in each pool. Multiple infamous tiebreaker situations have happened in the past. Most recently, Pool B of Eggdog, with Moki beating Cody, Cody beating Triff, and Triff beating Moki. Some events go off of game count or head-to-head records, while others have additional sets to try and break the set record ties. Either way, I don't think it's a great situation to be in. Additionally, having 4 pools of 16 players doesn't change the skill level of players each player gets to play. For double elimination, a 1 seed would get to play a 4 seed, and then a 2 seed would play a 3 seed, with the winners playing and the losers playing. Round robin guarantees that all 4 of those players play, but that only means 1 extra match. Additionally, one of the most alarming statistics that I found is that a 4 seed will never play another 4 seed unless there's an upset. A 3 seed will never play another 3 seed unless there's an upset. And a 2 seed will only play one other 2 seed in losers top 8. Everyone else either being a 3, 4, or 1 seed. In round robin, gauntlet, and final bracket, the lowest seed the 16th seed can play is the 12th seed unless there's an upset. Of course, you can say just win, lol. At the top level, there's upsets all the time, but I don't think that is best servicing the players. On paper, 4 players should go winless, which is the same amount as in a double elimination bracket. While they have more chances to get an upset, they never get a guarantee to play someone closer to their level. Usually in invitationals, there are most of the top 10, some top 20 players, and 2 or 3 players much lower ranked and sometimes not even ranked at all. I think those players at the lower end should have an opportunity to play each other. For example, at Ultimate Summit 4, Lavish and Nakat both had huge amounts of money raised, playing rare characters and having a lot of hype behind them. But they were not given much opportunity to succeed, having to play the likes of Tweak and Proto-Bantam later in bracket instead of other lower seeds like Fatality, Goblin, or even each other. Base Mage and Goblin were the 2 other 4 seeds, and they were able to prevail over multiple opponents despite the low seed, but they had easier pools and better bracket luck with their higher seed. Similarly, 3 seeds will likely get some wins against 4 seeds and losses to 1 and 2 seeds, which are all already expected. If the best voted in player does not get an opportunity to play against players at their level, that gives less chance to prove that they are above that level. They could perform as expected and may learn nothing other than their seed was accurate. While 2 seeds get a lot of opportunities to play the top 4 seeds, they will likely only get 1 chance to play someone closer to their level. I think pools should serve as a method for players to play closer to their level after they win or lose a couple matches. There can be redundancies if a player beats someone we already think they're better than, or loses to someone we already think that they're worse than. At Melee Summit 13, one of the most exciting sets was Salt vs Blue, which wasn't even supposed to happen, but did as a result of some players getting COVID, and Summit having a round robin of lower seeds to determine who would start the final bracket and winners. Head-to-head data is very useful for players ranked closely to each other. One method to slightly improve the format in my opinion is to lessen the amount of pools and having more players in each pool, like 3 pools of 5 or 6. This allows players the opportunity to have not only more sets, but also against players closer in seeding. Instead of playing 1, 8, and 9, the 16 seed will play 3, 4, 9, 10, and 15. Top 2 players in each pool could start in winners, with 2 gauntlet spots for the last 2 spots, and the rest of the players starting final bracket and losers. In my opinion, less round-robin pools is slightly better, but has an increased chance for playing someone twice and still may have the normal issues that round-robin can have. So I think the optimal format for Invitational is Swiss. Swiss pools is a method that has been used a few times, like Melee Summit 7 and Ludwig's Invitationals, and I think it's great. Some people have a negative perception of Swiss after Smash and Splash 4, but I think that Swiss was misused there. Having a smaller, controlled amount of players is a much better opportunity for Swiss, specifically if there is a square of 2. Entrant counts of 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on can all take optimal advantage of Swiss. In these formats, for a portion of rounds, there is a guarantee that players will always play someone with the same record as them. In a 16-player event, after round 1 of Swiss, there will be 8 players 1-0 and 8 players 0-1, with each player facing against someone with the same record in the next round. Then, 4 players are 2-0, 8 are 1-1, and 4 are 0-2, with the opportunity for the top 4 seeds to play each other, the bottom 4 seeds to play each other, and the middle 8 seeds to play each other. After the third round, 2 players are 3-0, 6 players are 2-1, 6 players are 1-2, and 2 players are 0-3. After 3 rounds, each record still has an even number of players, so you can still go 1 round further to leave 1 player undefeated, 4 players 3-1, 6 players 2-2, 4 players 1-3, and only 1 player with no wins. This method is doing the same number of matches as the exponent it takes for 2 to get to the entry count. 2 to the power of 3 is 8, so it's best to do 3 matches for an 8-entrant Swiss pool. 2 to the power of 4 is 16, so you can do 4 matches for 16 players. 2 to the power of 5 is 32, so you can do 5 matches of 32 players, and so on. This is a great way to guarantee more sets for players closer in seeding compared to round-robin pools. The 16th seed will likely play 1 and 9, which they already would in round-robin, but instead of also playing the 8th seed, they'd be seeded to play 13 and 15. The 11th seed would likely play 6 and 14 just like round-robin, but then playing 7 and 12 instead of 3. Only 1 player would be winless after pools instead of a potential 4 for round-robin, and they still have an opportunity to turn it around later in the events. And while there would be some set count ties, there wouldn't be ties for first like for round-robin, and most people that are tied would advance to the same round anyway, so ties would not be a problem. Events like Ludwig's Invitationals had players with 3 wins move on to the final bracket, and the players with 3 losses eliminated, which I think is reasonable, but I don't think is necessary if more sets are the goal. Additionally, eliminating players in pools does not give them the full invitational experience. Summit 7 also had 2 pools of 8 with 3 sets for each player, which also worked well with only 2 players instead of 4 going 0-3, and everyone else getting some sets against players closer to the level. But just having 1 pool for everyone also works well, sometimes better in my opinion. After Swiss pools, usually there's a gauntlet stage into a final bracket for all players, but I think there's a better option. Instead of doing a single elim gauntlet stage with everyone that lost starting losers round 1 of final bracket, I think having everyone being in a double elimination bracket with not everyone making final bracket is better. Normally, a bottom 4 seed will likely play 2 players seeded 9th through 12th, while a double elimination gauntlet stage gives them more chances to play each other. The common format I use is for 6 players to advance to winners quarters of bracket from Swiss, and then the other players being in a double elimination gauntlet bracket to make it into the final bracket with 2 winner spots and 4 loser spots being available. This leads to 2 players getting 15th and 2 players getting 13th. So the first 4 eliminations are more spread out, with only 2 players going 0-2 in this phase. Having 6 players advance to final bracket straight from pools with 2 spots from the gauntlet phase instead of 4 and 4 also helps remove some bracket luck and rewards good pools performances. Similar to the normal gauntlet format, this draws inspiration from waterfall brackets, where players that do well in pools are rewarded by getting placed in final bracket, while everyone else has the ability to earn a spot even if they did poorly in pools. This also gives more weight to pools compared to events like Eggdog and Ludwig's, where everyone starts in winners. Technically everyone starts in winners, but the bottom 2/3 or so of players have to play more sets in order to get to winner's side of final brackets. Final bracket in this format will probably have 8 players in winners and 4 in losers, which some players may not like as much since players in losers have 2 potential opponents. But that's how losers round 2 of the usual Summit final bracket is anyway, so I think it's fine. And there may be a higher chance of repeat matches in this format, but I think this is an adequate replacement of round robin pools to give players more chances against other seeds closer to them while not taking away the possibility of making upsets. I will say that there are more sets in this format, so players player endurance is something to consider, but 6 guaranteed sets instead of 4 or 5 for 16 players isn't too much of a difference. Also, it's slightly harder to run than Round Robin, and Round Robin is easier to grasp by viewers, but I think with a knowledgeable TO team and maybe a graphic to show the route that players went through can help overcome those shortcomings. I think Swiss Pools is absolutely worth it to try for invitationals, whether it be 1, 2, or 4 pools, or if you have 8, 16, or 32 players in each pool, or whatever amount can best guarantee that Swiss is used well. Additionally, Summit has almost always done 16 players, which is a reasonable amount for an invitational, but I think it can be a good idea to do more. Even if the average skill level goes down, every additional player makes the event more stacked. I think local and regional events shouldn't limit the amount of higher level gameplay that they bring, and consider bringing in 20, 24, or my favorite, 32 players. I have done a 32-player Swiss Invitational 4 times and a 16-player Swiss Invitational twice. Personally, I think it's good to do 32 if a larger player base is available. Here's an example of how to run it. For a 32-player Swiss pool, I do 5 rounds and then have the bottom 16 players starting in Division 3, the middle 10 players starting in Division 2, and the top 6 players starting in Division 1, with 6 players moving on from each division, 2 in winners, 4 in losers. This gives 7 guaranteed matches for every player, with multiple divisions to reward those who had good records while giving lower seeds more experience against other lower seeds, and the opportunity to play middle and higher seeds if they keep winning. For other reasons, that with not as many active players as I do in NBVA, the 32 may not include as many dedicated players and could lead to less crowdfunding through player voting. But if a lot of people are interested in joining the events, I think that doing more than 16 is a good idea. While this might make it less special to get in, and each player may have less screen time to promote themselves, it is good for those that are trying to get lots of matches and maybe get some good wins. So I think a larger amount of players can lead to a better event. Choosing opponents is sometimes used either for pools or for round 1 of final bracket. I think this is fine to do earlier in bracket. Personally, I don't love doing it later in bracket as it gives the option to make one side of bracket much stronger than another if a player chooses someone higher seeded than expected. I think choosing someone's first opponent is a good balance as it gives reward to invited players while giving enough space for potential skewed parts of brackets to be balanced out over time. Plus, the draft can help with promotion and excitement for the events. And so in case it isn't obvious, I'm a little biased towards the specific invitational method that I came up with, but I think it has a lot of merit, and other versions of Swiss Invitationals are still better for players across the board compared to the usual round-robin formats. Also, I wanted to add some notes about the Eggdog Invitational that just happened. I really enjoyed the event, and it seems like most of the players did too. They did a lot of the normal summit bracket format, with one main difference, which was the 4 LCQ spots challenging the bottom 4 players from pools. On paper, I think the Gallant Melee Open LCQ bracket is a fine idea, but in practice I think it could have been better. The 4 lowest placing players were mostly vote-ins: Snap, Lowercase Hero, and Chango. Zamu was an invite, but all 4 of them were 3-0'd by the 4 LCQ players and did not make it to final bracket. I think that if this format were done again, less players would be incentivized to campaign, since competing in the LCQ is better for multiple reasons. You can get more ranked wins instead of only playing against better players and potentially going 0-3. It's less expensive than raising potentially tens of thousands of dollars, and you can skip pools to get a chance of final bracket. Of course, you're not guaranteed a spot, so players that want to guarantee a spot should probably still campaign, but voting may be less attractive in the future. If the player skill was more comparable between the bottom 4 pools players and the top 4 LCQ players, I think it would have been better. But after seeing those players all weekend and becoming familiarized with them just for them to be booted after one set, for someone that was only rumored to be in the running for final bracket, kinda undermines the format a bit in my opinion. The bottom 4 players still got guaranteed sets against some of the best players in the world and got very valuable practice throughout the event, but I think this format could be improved by simply running the LCQ earlier in the weekend and having the LCQ players added to the pools portion of the bracket instead of subbing them out for players before final bracket. I still really enjoyed Eggdog. Seeing players like Triff, Nikki, Junebug, and Aura getting the chance to play a higher frequency of top-level matchups compared to a normal major was great. I will always support invitationals being a part of the Smash ecosystem. I just think there are some things that can be improved, specifically in bracket format. And if there are smaller scale invitationals, they should be more thoughtful about their procedures instead of copying Summit 1-to-1. There are so many cool invitationals on the horizon. I'll be sure to tune in, and I hope you do as well. Thanks for watching. If there's something you think I got wrong, or if there's a different subject you'd like me to cover, be sure to let me know in the comments, or join the Fastfall Productions Discord. We'll also be trying to give consistent weekly updates for Melee and Ultimate, as well as occasional updates for other games as well. Sorry for my voice being kinda shot, I've been sick recently, so thank you for sitting through this video. Hope you all have a great day.